September. September 20th. Welcome to the Lit Gals. I'm Martie Hoofer, and we are happy to have you.
We are happy, and the reason I'm just kind of chuckling is because a lot of schools have already been in for 2 full months now. And yes, here we are.
We're in September, and actually, you and I today are looking ahead to October, as if time doesn't pass fast enough.
I know.
We're just gonna look ahead to that first week of October. So, Anna, what's the first week of October?
Yes. So the first week of October is National Banned Book Week. Mm-hmm. And this is a touchy subject. It's a little contentious, I think, for some.
Let's pause right there. Contentious.
Okay.
Contentious. What a great word about holding things in tension and not quite squaring up. And I think that well defines where we sit right now with different ideas about literature.
Yes. I'd like to read a quote by the American Library Association on this. This is a dangerous time for readers and the public servants who provide access to reading materials. Readers, particularly students, are losing access to critical information, and librarians and teachers are under attack for doing their job. Once again, this is by the American Library Association. And, you know, Marty, when we were discussing this, part of us, both of us, sat there and went, "Oh gosh, I don't know. We don't know about this." But I think that it's something that we need to bring up about banned books, because I think that there's also a lot of confusion about banned books and who actually is banning them.
Yes. And I think that's important to talk about, because when people talk about banning books, there is not a nationwide organization that bans books.
No.
That's just not how it works. And I worked in a school district here in Indianapolis for over a decade, and they had a policy about banning books over 10 years ago. So so this concept of being cognizant, figure out my right words to say, being cognizant of what is in your local library, those policies have existed by librarians for decades. That if you have had a concern about a book, you can go to whatever library that has come from, be it a classroom, be it a school, be it a public library, and have a conversation about that. And so I think it's important for people to realize that there isn't one banning a book. And let's be honest, Anna, I, as a parent, could have banned books in my household.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. It's your household. You can ban a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talking about there is no, national, I think that social media also has played a very integral part in this, because me, Anna Cook, I can sit there and go on social media and say, these books need to be banned. But, who is Anna Cook?
Right.
In Florida or California or places like that. It kind of, go ahead.
Oh, and I think it's easy for that person to sit behind a screen and say, you should ban this book, but have no evidence and just say, you should ban this book. That doesn't work. Yeah. Now, I'm more than willing to have a conversation with you if you show me you've read it and you can point out these are the reasons why, and which is what I would have done. I didn't ban books in my household, just to make that clear. But had I wanted to say to my kids, hey, this book is not going to come in our house. I was able to lay out the reasons why.
Right.
And that's, I think, what is missing from the conversation are those specific pieces of evidence that we would never let a student writer get away with not providing.
Correct. And so when we see books that are banned, I want to know the reason why. So it kind of reminds me of the time that I was a 5th grade teacher, and I don't even remember what we were reading, but it had a couple of curse words.
Yeah.
And I had a parent that came in and was very, very angry. And why are you making my child read this? And, are you telling them they should be, cursing at their parents, et cetera, et cetera. And she demanded that it be banned. And it was, it was a bestseller. It was on the national reading list. It was unbelievable. Okay. It was one of those must reads.
Yeah.
And so it was one of the first times as a teacher and as a young adult, because it was, probably 5-6 years into my teaching career, that I stood my ground. Yeah. And I said, no. We are not going to stop reading this. No, we are not going to ban this in this school. And I said, more importantly, what we talk about is when we do come up with one of those words and we read it, we stop and we have discussion. Why did the author feel the need to put this curse word in?
Yes.
What impact does it make with the characters?
Yeah.
Is it appropriate? Was it appropriate? Was it not? So it had those higher level depth of knowledge 4 and 5, which is what our students need right now. I learned scores are terribly low. Once again, those are all higher level questions. Yeah. Why did the author do what they did? And let's talk about this, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's to me the biggest that's the problem when you say you're going to ban a book, because it's really not about the book. You're banning the conversation and the learning that goes with it. When my daughter was in 3rd grade, I had never really thought about my daughter was in 3rd grade a long time ago. So I hadn't really thought about this until just the other day. And I knew we were going to have this conversation. And her 3rd grade teacher required that they read a Newbery Award-winning book every month on their own. Okay, great. Have no problem with that. My problem was, or my concern, maybe it's a better word, I didn't know what my daughter was reading on her own because she wasn't talking about it with anybody. They read the book on their own and then they did a project, and they could pick, any of these projects, which I love the student choice aspect of this, of pick any book from this list, do any project from this list, right up my alley as a teacher. So what I did as a parent, I didn't go to Mrs. Walls, the teacher, say anything to her, didn't honestly even say anything to my daughter. I just always asked, what book are you reading this month? Then I trotted myself to my little public library, got the same book, and just read it on my own, just so I knew what Mariah was reading. And then if there was something in it I felt like we needed to talk about, I was prepared to have the conversation. And that's my concern with banning books, is we're stopping the thinking and we're stopping the learning. And that scares me.
And so piggybacking on that then, the parent just looked at me and went, okay. So I guess, once again, we need to stand firm in our belief.
Yes.
In what are we trying to, what are we trying to do here? Right?
Because let's be honest, Anna, I'll just randomly pick up the books that are on my desk. It's not about these texts. these are great. There's nothing wrong with them. But it's not about this text. It's about what we learn from them and talk about through them.
Right.
Give me any text as a teacher and I can use it. It's not about the text itself. It's about the conversations we have.
Yeah. What did we learn? What are we learning from this? So I just started Googling banned books.
Okay.
So the first one that I wanted to talk about was probably one that I loved. I just absolutely loved this book. I do believe I was in 12th grade, so high school. The Grapes of Wrath.
Oh.
John Steinbeck.
Yeah.
One of the biggest bestsellers, award-winning, prized piece of work that he ever wrote.
Yeah.
According to a banned book list, it's banned.
Sure.
So once again, I went back and I said, why?
Right.
It is about the Dust Bowl. It is about the Great Depression. My mother was born 1929 during the Great Depression. So I think that I loved it so much because my mother and I could have a conversation about it. Okay. So the reason that it is banned or was banned, according to one of the groups, is because it talks about the comprehension of that time. It was a very bad time, 1929, stock market crash, deaths, people were committing suicide, people were out on the streets. And that was the reason it was banned, because it was showing, a depressed time, depression, etc. But I would like to say that it really also showed us the compassion that people had for one another during that time. And my mom and I can remember it so vividly. We really talked about how people were so compassionate with their neighbor who no longer had a home.
Right.
With their friends who could not afford, a meal for their 5 children.
Right. Yeah.
But it was banned because of the depressive situation.
Right. Completely ignoring the positive of understanding our history, making history come to life. It's much more interesting to read The Grapes of Wrath than it is a history book because of the way they're written.
I would think.
And ignoring the good human qualities we can find.
That bubbled up from such a depressive situation.
Right. So I've got a theme running through my head. I'm anxious to see if your other 2 books follow this theme. So what's your next one?
Okay. So my next one was Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume. Another banned book. It was one of probably her bestseller. Okay. Among many that she had.
Yes. So Judy Blume, many bestsellers, to the point that one was made into a movie, decades after it was published? Yeah, that's a sign of a quality piece of writing.
Right. So that is about a young girl, an adolescent girl, having anxiety about changes in her life, menstruation, having to wear a bra, and boys.
Yeah.
Okay. It was written in the early 70s. I think it was 1970-ish. And the thing that really struck me about this was I read that book. It was a time that our moms would have been more than happy to talk with us. But it was not like it is now, where the moms were very forthright, very telling, very detailed, etc. It just wasn't. It was the early 70s where the woman felt like she had a voice,
Mhm.
but you had to ask her for that voice or ask her about it. And I just remember that book, and it really helped me. It helped me to understand why I was anxious, why I was nervous about XYZ.
Yeah.
And it really helped me.
Yeah.
When a time where, once again, I know my mother would have been happy to talk about it, but I had to ask her, and I just didn't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
It was 1970.
And isn't that the beauty of reading, is it allows us to find answers when we're ready for them, and to process at a level we're comfortable with. I can read much more violent books than I can watch violent movies, because
I agree.
When it's a movie, I can't change the image I see, but when it's in a book, it's like my brain brings it to a level that exactly, it's much less violent in my head, because that's what I'm comfortable with.
I agree.
So I think that's something we don't talk a lot about with reading, but our brain is our own little sensor, allowing us to do and understand at levels we can understand, because that's what our brain does.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the last one was The Color Purple by Alice Walker. I remember watching the movie first and reading it then second. The reason that it was banned was because of the slang. So the slang of the African American, some profanity. And it also said that it represented a negative light on Black males.
Okay.
And once again, Martie, I thought about the rich conversation that this book has for the reader, the learner, the teacher, whoever that might be, right?
Yep.
The slang at that time, do we say a lot of that now? So that we could be doing lots of comparing, contrasting. Once again, why did the author feel the need to put in some profanity?
Right.
Why? Okay. That rich discussion. And also the representation of the Black male. And I wanted to talk to you about that. You have raised a wonderful son who is African American. And I want to ask you specifically, what would you have done about that representation of Black males, the negative representation? I'm putting you on the spot. I'm sorry.
No, you are. I just was trying to figure out how I want to attack the question, because I think it's an important question to think about. Yes, there is the negative representation of Black males in that text and 30,000 other ones, pick one. But I think that's important to talk about, both with my African American son and my Caucasian daughter, because back to your question of why. And so we need to talk about works like The Color Purple, give us a glimpse into what's playing in people's heads, because there are things playing in people's heads that they don't say out loud. And so
I didn't think about this.
So it gives us a glimpse into what some people may be thinking. And so actually, I had that conversation with students when we read Langston Hughes' Thank You, Ma'am. And Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones is the dominant female character. And then there's a male younger boy, I can't remember his name, Roger maybe. But so why does she carry those biases with her? Because my students at 7th grade would pick up on her biases. Okay, yes, she's got them. Where do you think they come from? What does that tell us about her? Let's unpack her. Okay, so take that to the color purple. Yes, negative representation in that book. But guess what? You may be sitting right next to in a restaurant somebody with those very same thoughts. Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about it.
Yes.
Yeah. Because once again, and I know that you being a literacy person, if I can read it and talk about it, I can write about it, right?
Yeah.
And then I've got a full understanding.
And I think, Anna, if I can read it and think about it and write about it, I think it takes some of the scary and some of the power out of it. Because I get a glimpse behind the curtain. And I start seeing that person, while I don't agree with them, they're just a person with biases and thoughts that I can start to unpack. And their thoughts are no different than my thoughts.
And better understand. So instead of putting blinders on, instead of saying, no, I'm not going to do that, let's at least read and try to figure it out, right?
Absolutely. And actually, Anna, so the theme that I had not thought about running through your books as I heard you talk, this is never a word I think I heard you say, but it's a word I kept thinking of, runs through my books also. And it's that I think books are banned. Let me rephrase that. I think a reason people want to ban books is that they're uncomfortable.
I was going to say afraid.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Either one works for me.
Yeah.
Afraid.
Let's use uncomfortable. I like that. So what do you have? What do you have?
Yeah. Okay. So thinking about I've got 3, just like you do. Mine are much more modern, which is neat that we're going to talk about books that have been written in the last 10 years and books that were written 50 years ago. Well, Steinbeck was written more than 50 years ago. All up here on banned books list. They've been banned by somebody somewhere for some reason.
Certainly not national, but somebody.
No. So my first one is a very modern book. It's called Dear Martin by Nick Stone. It's a young adult book. You see, it's pretty skinny. It's a real fast read. And this kiddo, I don't remember his Justice. That's right. Because the follow-up book is called Dear Justice. So Justice is the main character, 17-ish, 18-ish, senior in high school. And he writes letters to Dr. King. And he has studied some of Dr. King's works, and he's writing these letters. He knows Dr. King is never going to write back. He's well aware that Dr. King has passed, but he's trying to figure out how to be a Black man in America today. And he's looking to Dr. King for wisdom. Banned book, my friend.
A banned book.
A banned book.
I'm trying to better myself. I'm trying to figure out how I can be the best version of me that I can be. A banned book.
A banned book. And so I just recently read this, and I am kicking myself all over the place because this book has been out for some time. I've read many other Nick Stone works, and I've never picked up this one. I'm just kicking myself all over the place for not reading this one sooner.
And then when you were in the classroom.
Yeah.
So you could have that conversation.
Yes, because it is rich. And as a literacy teacher, man, because he talks about Justice refers to specific writings of Dr. King. So then you could go pull those out and look at his speeches and some of his like letters from a Birmingham jail. Oh my gosh.
What a book, unit.
Yes. You could probably write a whole semester curriculum. Yes, out of this book. It's fantastic. So thinking about, is the representation of Black males completely positive in this book? No, trust me, it's not. There's some negative in here, but the conversation is rich and the growing opportunity is there. Yeah. Okay, my next one. Also, I think your second one, well, actually a couple of yours, maybe all of yours were made into movies. This one has not been, but my next one, very popular movie, which would be interesting to see if those that want to or have lobbied to ban this book let their kiddos see the movie. That would be an interesting conversation.
Oh, that would be.
But the Hunger Games.
Oh.
Because let's be honest, this is a real uncomfortable book. That you've got this whole Big Brother thing, and we're allowing kids into this arena trying to kill off each other. Holy cow. That is really uncomfortable. But how rich is the conversation with kids out of that book, and tie it to social studies, like you just mentioned. You can talk about the caste system.
Oh, yeah.
Let's be honest. That's what
that's
this
it.
Is. That's what
right.
It is. Different name. Same thing. Go for it.
Yeah. And you know, you said the word, you know, uncomfortable, right?
Yeah. Yeah. All kinds of uncomfortable right here. Wildly popular movie trilogy. I mean, oh my God.
Huge. And so I love that question. Whoever banned it, you know what I mean? Did you let your child watch the movie though?
Yeah. Yeah, that would be my question. And then, Anna, I don't know that you and I have ever talked about my last book. And I can't believe, I don't think we've even mentioned it on the show, which floors me, because there are very few middle schoolers in this country that have not read or seen this book. Lois Lowry's Go Get Her.
A banned book.
And
do you know why they banned whoever it was? Once again, not national.
Right.
Whoever banned it, why they banned it?
I did not dig into that. I wish I would have done that like you did. But I'm going to guess, this is purely Martie speculation, but I'm going to guess it's the scene with Jonah, or one of the conversations Jonah and his dad have about, you know, how they're like test tube babies and they're like breeding people. And I'm betting I bet it comes down to that.
Okay.
Pure speculation on my part, because I didn't dig into the why, but I'll tell you what, this is on so many banned lists. Oh my goodness. And I just think about, I feel bad, going back to your Library Association quote, I feel bad for the kiddos who aren't getting to have these conversations, whether they're middle schoolers or your seniors reading The Grapes of Wrath. What are they missing out on?
And may never have that conversation or read such a rich, you know, material, right?
Yeah. It's the conversation they're missing out on. And that makes me sad. And Anna, we are out of time. How did that happen?
I can't believe this. I was going to do another layer of this whole thing, but I guess I'm not.
Maybe we'll come back to this another time. So real quickly, what are you reading or listening to today?
You're going to roll your eyes and go, oh, Anna. Okay. Literacy workstations. We're starting back to school. Teachers are, you know, trying to fit the workstations in, and they're coming blank. And what am I going to do? What should I do with, you know, whatever? I love this book. It's by Debbie Diller. It's an oldie, but a goodie. So if you've got it on the shelf, dust it off. But the reason I love this book so much is because every single chapter talks about a specific station. So poetry station, literacy station. So not only does it talk about all the materials that you may need for that, but also how it looks in every grade, K through 5.
Nice.
Yeah. So if I'm, you know, coming across, I just don't know what to do about that poetry station, just read chapter 8. That's all you have to do. You don't have to read the whole thing. I love this book. And this is a really must-have, especially right now when our teachers are implementing small groups, and then also, you know, workstation time.
Love that. And I love books that you don't have to read the whole thing. Pick it up, flip to the index or flip to the table of contents. What do I need? Get that now, read the rest later.
Go on.
Yes. Anna, I've been waiting to tell you about this book. This was recommended to me by a friend, Dr. Erin McNeil. I hope we'll have her on the show sometime.
Yeah.
But the book I'm reading right now is called Garlic and Sapphires. And this lady was the Ruth Reichel. Was the New York Times food critic for like a decade. She worked in LA. Yes, she worked in LA for like 3 or 4 years at the LA Times, and then the New York Times lured her away. And this is why I read, Anna, and you're the same way. I am never going to be a food critic. I am never going to be in a arena shooting at other kids. I'm never going to be a 17-year-old Black boy in America. I read to live different lives and
to learn.
Yes. And so, Ruth,
so what is this about?
So she takes you on the journey of what it's like to be a food critic. And like at this point, she has these alter egos, for lack of a better word. She dresses up in costumes and like becomes different people and goes to different restaurants. But not only do you get to read like about her process, which is fascinating. Food critics do so much more than I knew, but you get to read the review of that restaurant, which is super cool.
Yeah.
You get to, she gives you recipes sometimes. So if you want to make this food at home, this is how you could do it. Super cool. And I like how she writes her reviews. She doesn't write it for the people who get to go to the restaurant. She writes it for the you and I who don't get to go, and what would it be like to experience?
Oh, that's interesting. I never would have thought about that.
Me neither. And when she was explaining that that's her approach, which was not the way the New York Times did it prior to her getting there, I was like, well, isn't that really smart? If I get to go to these fancy restaurants, why do I need a review? I don't get to go to these she ate an $800 meal a couple chapters ago. I don't eat $800 meals.
No.
But now I've read about it.
Oh, I'm going to write that down. That's
so Garlic and Sapphires. I have no idea where the title comes from. I'm not that far in the book yet, but it's a super fun read.
That's good. Yeah.
Highly recommend. Well, we are out of time.
We are. And as always, please be well.
Do good work.
And let's always keep in touch.
Thank you, friends. We'll see you next month.
See you next month.